Well, hello and welcome to Positively Positive. And tonight we have an amazing guest, and I have so much to ask him about. But let me tell you about Positively Positive. We are Positively Positive has been in me for 20 years. And what this involves is anything and anybody, everything involved with HIV. Doesn't matter who you are, what you do, whether you are diagnosed with it, whether you're a long-term survivor, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're community oriented, whether you're with an organization. It doesn't matter. If you have a story about how HIV is a part of your life and you have a story, we want to hear it. That's what this show is. It's a storytelling show. It's me, Susan Mintz, Susan Lee Mintz, your hostess, asking one guest all about their incredible journey. And tonight's guest is just an incredible man. And I'm so excited about interviewing him. So if you have a story that HIV involves, please call the number on the screen or get in touch with Campbell Health Solutions, because that's how we remove the stigmas. That's how we see the different faces of HIV. And we'll talk about everything from the resources, how to get help, to people who are going on this journey with you, and that you're not alone. You are of value and you are important. So I think you understand that. Our shows do air on Monday nights from 7 to 8 o'clock on most streaming channels, which is really wonderful because you have LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We're all over the place. So 7 to 8 on Monday nights. And our guests, I will tell you now, all our guests have one thing also in common besides an HIV issue somewhere in their life's story, is they are community service people. I think when you have something that is so powerful in your life as HIV, community becomes so important. Service and giving back and helping others has been a part of every one of my guests' life. I want to tell you a little bit about me. You can go to susanmintz.com, SusanMintz.com, and you can check me out on the Positively Positive page and on the books page. My journey started in 1981 when I heard about AIDS, and I was married to a bisexual man whom I adored, I loved. But when I heard about AIDS, I knew we had to make some changes in our life. He would not change. He would not get tested. So we chose to have an abstinent relationship when it came to sex. But our intimacy, our friendship, our love for travel, adventure, nothing changed. He was who he was. And it was at the height of HIV in the 80s and the 90s. I could not change him and I would not leave him because the Lord told me to stay with him, and it would have been till death do us part. 30 years later, after his death, I still love this man, and my mission and commission is to talk about HIV wherever I've given an open door. I've documented his entire illness every day of his 2-year journey with it. I documented it in my book called Committed to Love. And if you see that there's a little shadow, it's my light above it. If you go to the books page, you will see Committed to Love by Susan Lee Mintz, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. There are 24 chapters of issues. I am a story writer. I'm an issue writer. I am someone that likes to get to the nut of what a person is functioning about, get into their life, get into their world. And the next book I wrote was called And I Held Their Hands with a Hospice Heart. 24 stories of people I met while I was involved for 6 years as an 11th hour volunteer with hospice. I say both books are available through Barnes & Noble, though I suggest Amazon. They are only $22.95, which is less than a good dinner out that will look like nothing you ate the next day. And I always say that what you ate tonight for $30 will not look like my book 10 years from now. These books are incredibly important with valuable information, how I lived my life, how other people came through their journeys. Again, not all about HIV. My life committed to love. Yes, that's my journey with him. The hospice stories are other people's lives as I could relate, but the books are just absolutely amazing. And now, what you've all been waiting for, I have the absolute pleasure of meeting our incredible guest. And he's going to take you on a journey. And his name, I'm not going to tell you all about him. His name is Steve Hemraj. And in just a moment, he will be coming out and doing our show. Welcome, Steve Hemraj. Hello, my friend.
Hi, Susan.
It's so exciting to sometimes I interview people I know, but that's why the bios are very important because I can pick out of bios from people I don't know what I feel will be most beneficial to our listeners. But you have a story, and I've never gone through 3 pages of questions. So in between, just give me a little pause so I can get the next one in because I want our viewers to hear everything about you. So Steve Hemraj, you live now though in New York, but tell me what about Uganda, where you were born, and what your life was like in 2002 and why you made some changes?
So, a little bit of correction there, Susan. I'm from Guyana in South America.
Oh, Guyana. I don't have my glasses
Yes.
on. Guyana. Yes, big difference. Thank you. Guyana.
Good.
Guyana.
So, I did not decide to come to Guyana. I graduated from high school in 1988. It was the first time I heard of HIV. And when the doctor was talking about HIV, he said, it is a gay man's disease. And as somebody who I know, I was gay, but not fully understand what gay is. That is how I first learned of HIV in 1988. In 1990, I was 19, and I believe I contracted HIV in 1990 when I was 19 years old. I'm 52 years old. What I know now about HIV, it takes 10 years for you to progress to AIDS if you are not on treatment. And in 2001, I began to get sick in Guyana. And my friend, who was a doctor, told me if I don't leave Guyana, I would die. I need to come to the US and get care. On November the 2nd, 2021, he was murdered in his office. And I always give homage to him because had it not been for him, I would not have been in the US. I remember him going with me to buy my ticket,
But
drove me to the airport, and I got to the US on January 8th, 2002. 1 month after I arrived in the United States, I got very sick. I collapsed at home, was taken to the emergency room. I was given up for dead. I was in a coma for 30 days. And that is why I came to the US for treatment, but not because of my own doing, because I was still in denial. It was because of a good friend that
but
I graduated from high school with.
but you also felt that the LGBTQ community there, it was very prejudiced against you. I mean, against that at that point, you felt that there was a discrimination there in your
Yes.
country.
And so my
You were
biggest fear was being diagnosed in Guyana with HIV. It was done privately by him. Had I been open, had I been in Guyana and got sick, um, Guyana is a small place. The city is 250,000 people. By the time I get home, everybody would know that
Yeah.
I had HIV. My biggest fear was not to die in Guyana, was to come to the United States to die so that nobody knows that I had HIV or I identify as a gay man. So the discrimination is severe. It is
So
still
you,
there.
uh, but you were
And so,
ostracized, it says, by your family and friends. You
yes,
were ostracized by them, and you were granted
yes,
asylum here in 2003.
yes. So when I came to this country and I got sick and I was in a coma, my own family were talking about me. Don't, they're waiting to go see me. I am on a deathbed. And the discussion that they were having downstairs before they go to see me was about my sexuality. Had I not been gay, I would not have contracted HIV. I did not know about this conversation. I have a best friend who is also a lesbian, and she came to see me, and she had this conversation with them, and she embarrassed them. Why are you coming to see your nephew and your cousin and my brother-in-law if he's dying and you're talking about his sexuality and HIV? I had my aunt had invited me to her house when I recovered, came out the hospital, and she invited me, and it was my cousin's birthday, and they asked me to cut the cake with her. After I cut the cake and she fed me, every utensil that I touched, my aunt grabbed, put her hand in another plastic bag, grab everything, put it in a garbage bag, and take it outside the house to put it.
Yeah.
While this is for my own family. But when I went
Yes.
home, my brother had me special plates, special cups. I could not use the regular bathroom. I had to go in the basement to use the bathroom. And so this is somebody who just recovered, who was dying, came out with HIV and was ostracized. My cousin, who is a pastor, invited me to his church. And his
What?
message that day was about Sodom and Gomorrah. And people often confuse the scripture Sodom and Gomorrah
Yeah.
as a gay bashing scripture. And so this is the kind of thing that I faced when I came out of the coma and my experience with my own family. And this was 2002.
And you were young. You were a very young man.
I was
And
30
you were a
years old.
very young man then who was trying to deal with this. Yes. One thing you came out, what I really liked here, it said you came out publicly after you were invited to the Amnesty International Eastern Conference in 2004, and you said it was the most liberating moment of your life. You said, I am a gay man.
When I confirmed my HIV status and everything, it was not HIV that was much difficult for me to, it's for me to say that word and
Okay.
acknowledge my sexual orientation. That was more difficult. I could have taken the
Mhm.
medication and look good and be, but I had to struggle with my sexual orientation. And I remember
Mm.
a gentleman met me somewhere that I was talking about my life in Guyana and everything that was going on in Guyana. He invited me as the guest speaker for Amnesty International at the Northeastern Conference in Boston at Boston University. I prepared a speech, everything that I needed to say, and I was nervous. But I get up on stage, and as far as my eyes can look, every chair was seated. It was over 500 people that attended that conference.
Hmm.
And I tore up my speech. and I said, I'm going to talk to you from my heart.
You're back.
I remember my first line of introduction is I said, I'm a proud gay man living with HIV. I get goosebumps every time I talk about this. I'm getting goosebumps right now because I felt for the first time
Me too.
that I said I am gay. And I was saying it in front of a crowd that had more than 500 people. And at that moment, I felt like a mountain just lifted off my head because then I accepted
Yeah.
who I am, what I am, and HIV would not stop me from living and be me, the person that I am today. And it's to
Yeah, man.
acknowledge the biggest thing for me
That's wonderful.
was to acknowledge, yes, that I'm HIV positive, yes, that I'm a gay man, and I don't need
Yeah.
validation from friends and family or anyone to live my authentic
No,
life.
no. Wonderful.
And I
I
have this,
want to
I have
also
this,
ask you now, though, about your.
I have this phrase that I use in my life now that
I must.
if you don't add value to my life, I have nothing to lose.
Right. Tell me now, Steve, um, who asked to tell me about him. His name is Lal. What is your brother? What is your
My brother,
brother's name?
my brother who is 2 years older than me, he was
Lal.
he was gay also, and I was his
I want to
support
know about your
when I was in
brother
Guyana.
who passed
And
away
then
right now. On
a couple
first.
of, a couple of years after I came here, he committed suicide. He could not live in Guyana as a gay man. When I was there, I was his support. But after I left, he had no support. And 2 years after, he committed suicide because of what people were
Yes.
saying about him, about his sexual orientation.
Were you?
We were very close.
Did he try to come to the country to get asylum?
He
Did he
could
ever
not.
try to get asylum here?
No, because you have to get a visa to come here before you can apply for asylum. You can apply for asylum still living in Guyana. I was fortunate that I had a visa, a 10-year visa, because in Guyana, I was a
Uh,
bank manager. I had the means and the position and the stature to get a 10-year visa. He could not.
I'm sure that was a big loss in your life. What is the phrase
Absolutely.
in a quote, anti-man? About that, what
So
anti-man
yes. So
means. What is that stuck out?
In Guyana, people were not referred to as a gay man or homosexual or anything. It was this derogatory term that was used to describe people who were gay. It was the slang there they use is anti-man, which is an anti-man. Now, I've never
Mhm.
understood the word why they call you anti-man because I was never anti-man. I was a pro-man because it is used in a derogatory term, just like in Jamaica, they would not say gay, they would say you're a chichi man. And so in the Caribbean, different countries in the Caribbean, they
Mm.
have different names that they describe. But when it's used,
Yeah,
it's
different
used in a
phrase.
very derogatory way.
I want this also. So I mean, these I'm getting from you are so amazing. So I'm so glad I took so much time really reading your bio because it was fascinating. Tell me about your mother at 74, who you were gay bar, Angers, I
So
think. Tell me about
yeah,
that and
I'm
what
I'm
did your mother
excited to
have to
tell this
say and
story
how was
because
she?
I well, back in 2009, before she came to the US, I spent $5,000 to take her to Trinidad and to spend some time in Tobago, which is a very tourist country, a tourist island. And so I told her I wanted to tell her something. I wanted to come out to my mother. And so I went to this resort and I was on this beach and she keeps saying, "What is it that you gotta tell me? What come on, tell me what you gotta tell me." And so we were on the beach in Tobago. We were sitting on a chair. We had a table there, and we were having breakfast on the beach. I wanted the moment to be perfect. I wanted to be like the most incredible moment that I came out to my mother. And I said to her, she keeps asking me, "What is it that you want to tell me?" What? And I said, "Mommy, I want to be the one to tell you that I'm gay." And when I said that, she said, "That is what you have to tell me?" I know. A mother always
Yeah.
know. And so when she came here to the country, I wanted her to see that I'm not alone. So I took her to the gay village in Manhattan, Christopher Street. And we were walking down the street and she was elbowing me. "Look, one like you." Then she said, "Oh my God, look, two more. Oh my God, look how many people like you." And I started to laugh and I said, "You want to see the real thing?" And I took her into a gay bar in New York City. It was predominantly more of an African American community. And my mother at 74 years old, I am taking her into a bar that is a gay bar. And she was sitting there and she looking around and she was like, "Oh my God, there how many gay people are there?" And I said, "There are millions of people. I am not alone." And she was sitting at the bar, and every person in that bar were coming up to say hi. I wanted to buy her a drink, and she was like, "I don't drink." And there were
Yeah.
many
And the
people who
men saw
came to me and
Lucy.
said, "I wish I could bring my mother to a gay bar." And I said, "Steve, you are privileged to have your mother coming to a gay bar with you." And that was her first experience in the gay community.
And so your mother had a good time.
She had a good time, and she was like, "Oh my God, everybody in here are very friendly."
Every
And
once in a
from
while
that
we have a
moment,
little
and it's from
glitch
that moment,
with Steve's feed. Not sure if but the last story you may want to again get off the link and come back on if you have to, because there's an
no,
interruption with your feed.
is it me or it might be on your end.
But who knows?
So
You may want you, I don't no, go ahead.
yes, so from that moment when I had
Anyway,
that liberating moment, I I didn't need anybody's validation. You are my mother. You brought me into this world. And if you don't have a problem with it, I don't give a flying rat's ass about anybody else. So that also gave me the power. And the thing is,
they
it was a
wished
while.
others were alive.
It was a while for me, for my mother to get to that point, but I brought her to that point because I came out to her in 2009
That's wonderful.
and she came here in 2012. So I already came out to her, but what I wanted her to know is that I am not alone. And she embraced that. She
Yeah.
cherished that
Well,
because now
she
that
wasn't
I
alone
am
in
not.
the bar.
She was the only woman in the bar and the only mother.
Steve, I want you to tell me about how, yeah, they said they wish their mother was like that.
Yes, because
And how you can be
people
involved with
who,
the mayor, with Mayor Blum.
as I started to get comfortable with my sexual orientation. I worked for my first job was in Central Harlem, and I was the direct assistant director for the Central Harlem HIV Care Network. And at that time, I realized working in the HIV community now, I realized I had a role to play. And
Okay.
I decided that I was going to use my skills, my life, to be at the table making decisions about people living HIV. You could not see what's going on. And back, this is 2004, when HIV was still, we were still
Right.
talking about reinfection with the resistant strain, which is not a topic now, they're telling you. And and the first time that I did this, I realized that I have to be at the table at the New York City HIV Planning Council. And the first time I attended the meeting was all chaos. And so that year I applied to be on the New York City HIV Planning Council. And I was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg.
Okay.
I came from a banking background with a finance. So for me serving on the HIV Planning Council, I had a skill that
And
I brought to it, which was the finance.
often see. I'm going. Going back off and going. Okay. We're back now, I think.
I am back. I'm back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, that's great. I went on my phone for whatever reason. We'll just see. Now you just work through it. That's how I. As long as we're talking some way, somehow, the show is fine. Anyway, so you were under several mayors. You were under Mayor Bloomberg and the Bill De Blasio, and then who was the other one you were under? But you've been with the HIV Planning Council now. That's your
Yeah,
thing.
yes, I've been serving on the New York City HIV Planning Council back in 2003. I started, and it was the New York City HIV Planning Council, like every other jurisdiction who have a planning council. That's where they get money from the federal government for HIV. It is the planning council that decides where and how the money is being spent in what population and in
Right.
geographic area. And I felt at the time that fun, funding were going to different places that did not have the needed the resources but were not getting it. And so my voice at the table as a gay man, as a person living with HIV, was
Mm.
important because while I was getting my life together, there were a lot of people who needed more services that I needed because back then I began working. And there was a lot of people who could not be at the point where they're ready for work, because there was a lot of people who are much sicker than me, but they were not receiving the service. And so I've been on the
Right.
HIV planning council on and off. And then recently, even though I don't work in HIV now, I work in hematology oncology with a rare blood genetic disorder called thalassemia. I felt like people were not still getting services because on each new mayor, there are different priorities by the Department of Health.
Yeah.
And so I told my boss
Yeah.
that this is something I've been doing. Even though it has nothing to do with my job, I would like to be back on the planning council. There are going to be meetings that is going to be happening while I'm working. And it is the best job I
And
have
Steve,
now in HIV.
that's one.
Uh,
That's so good.
and he
Steve,
said,
what is
go for it. It is for the community benefit. And I go back on it. So now I'm currently serving back on the HIV Planning Council.
what is HASA? HASA stand for?
So that is the HIV AIDS Service Administration. And in New York City, the HASA, the HIV AIDS Service Administration Department of the Human Resources, they provide housing for people living with HIV.
Mm,
And
it's so
then
important.
back in those days, you had to have an AIDS diagnosis to get housing. In recent years, one of the part of the advocacy that we did was you don't have to have a clinical diagnosis of AIDS to get housing. Housing, if you're not stably housed, you are not going to have a safe space to take your medication. And as part of that, my advocacy with the larger HIV community advocated that if you are HIV positive, you should not wait until you have a clinical AIDS diagnosis to get stable housing. Because if you get stable housing when you were HIV positive, you can have a better life. Don't have a problem taking your HIV. You don't have to hide your medication like I used to do in omega-3 bottles. You now have the freedom to do that. And then if you are healthy and undetectable, you can transmit HIV. And so now with the HIV Service Administration, which is a city program, uh, if you tested positive with HIV, you can get housing. And
You're
so
so active
when
in
I
the community.
yeah, so
That's what
when the
what I get
legislation
from.
was passed, when the legislation was passed, there for many years no one was appointed to the position. And because of my advocacy and the work that I've been doing in the community, there were recognition because I was no longer afraid to live and be who I am and be an advocate.
Mm,
And I was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg to become the first chair of the House Advisory Board. Now, this is 2004. It was 2 years after I came to this country. And all of this could have only happened because I put myself out there. I was a staunch advocate for the
yeah.
LGBT HIV community, and people see you and they recognize your work. And I had just come to this country, and it's because of my not being afraid of living with HIV or not being afraid of being a gay man and be public about it. It opened a whole different
You-
opportunity. Now, I would not have been on the show if I did not meet Ricardo Jackson when I was working in the HIV community in Harlem, when I
Me
was
too.
serving there. And it's
I wouldn't either.
because of this HIV, you meet, and I'm talking to the audience who's still having issues coming out and disclosing. It's 2023. We live in a society, whether people don't like it or not, you have to be you. And as I said, my philosophy of living today is if you don't add value to my life, I have nothing to lose. And if it includes friends and family, let them
So
go.
be it. So be it.
So be it.
And so be it. So the nice thing is that I really love is that you are so much like most, like every one of our guests we've had. You are community oriented. You are service oriented. You feel the need to become a part of a community that could be underserved, underprivileged, stigmatized, all of that. And you do your thing by reaching out and getting on these boards and these panels and making yourself known and telling your story. That's what this show is about. We want to hear how you overcame obstacles, and you sure did, to become right now in 2023 on November 11th. We're here, and you're talking about it to a crazy lady who wears turbans and gloves and jewelry. One more question here, though. I got so many more. What's a patient outreach director for? What's Cody's anemia? Patient outreach. What is Cody? Cody's or
Coolies,
anemia? What?
coolies,
Yeah.
coolies anemia. It's a rare blood genetic disorder called thalassemia. And so, if a child is born with this disease can be only transferred to a child from parents. What happens in thalassemia, or for any red blood cell to carry enough oxygen to your brain, you have to have both an alpha and a beta gene. And in the absence of one, the child has a 1 in 4 chance to born with that disease. If that child is born with that disease, they have to get blood transfusion every 2 to 3 weeks to survive. And here again,
Whoa.
I am making this comparison between what I do now for somebody who born with thalassemia. I have to get blood transfusion, have a much more difficult life and lifespan of survival than somebody living with HIV, because there is a
Oh,
medication
yeah.
for HIV, but there's no cure. And today, if you are adherent to your treatment and everything else, you can live a normal, healthy life. I'm 52 years now. I've been living more than half of my
Yeah, babe.
life with HIV. And so
Well, the other thing is,
there's an
you said
opportunity
that
for
this,
people to be
you,
out, because you can impact other people's lives. And one of the things that I did when I was working in HIV, I was linking people to care. And I was the first person that the Department of Health would send somebody who is just diagnosed, who is just an adolescent, an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 21-year-old. And I would sit them down and I would say to them, what is it that you plan to do for the future of life? I want to go to college. I want to work. I want to do this. I said, but you can do all of that. HIV is not going to kill you. You can accomplish everything in life that you want to. All you have to do is keep your doctor's appointment, engage in your hair care. You be the one to control your health. You have to tell the doctor what you want. And so I'll teach them how to read their labs and their CD4 and viral load and the correlation between a low viral load and a high immune system. And they get that one-on-one. There was back in 2010, there was this young man who was sent to me. He was tested positive at the department. He came to see me the same day. And I sat him down and I told him, I give him the outlook of life and not the death or the challenges. And I said, you can do this. He moved to Tennessee a few years ago. And I did not hear back from this person for since 2012. And he called me a few months ago to say, thank you. You were
mm,
the first person I met after I tested positive. And
yeah,
it's because of you, I am graduating from college next month. And
isn't that
so
wonderful?
I'm talking to all of the people who are listening or who are watching this. If you're HIV positive, whether you know it or not, you have your own story to tell. And your story can make or break people. It People are going to remember you for the rest of their life. And it's a
Hmm.
powerful story because each and every one of us who are HIV positive, especially if you're a gay man, have a unique story to tell that can provide hope to other people.
And Steve, that's exactly why Ricciardo and I wanted a show like this, because I knew there was a need years ago. I've been wanting to do a show like this, but it never materialized because I never met someone with that passion who was willing to step out and step up and put his name out there to the cyber world. And when I mentioned it to him, was I was on a couple of his podcasts. And next thing I said, I want this show. I mean, it's needed, it's necessary. Everybody has a story, whether you have HIV or whether you're in an organization or you're a pastor. I don't care, but you have a story. Call in. I mean, I was so passionate, and so was he. He had this white sheet of paper. He's already writing stuff down. I knew I connected with the right person for the right reason. And no matter what technical issues we have, no matter how many bleeps and burps and disappearances we have, your story right now could be saving hundreds of lives because you're out, you're open, you care, and you know what you're talking about. I just want to know a little bit more about this disease because you get it from the mother and the father. What are the predispositions? Is it come? It's
So it's a genetic disease. So I mentioned that in order to produce a good, healthy red blood cells that carry oxygen to your brain, you have to have both the alpha and the beta gene. So if one parent has the alpha gene and the other parent have the alpha gene, there is an absence because you could be a silent trait carrier that don't require blood transfusion and don't even know it. So it affects people of the Mediterranean descent, people in East Asia, South Asia. And so if you are anything that have this background, you need to get tested because if you both
I,
parents have the same alpha or beta genes with the absence of one, there's 1 in 4 chance that that child will
okay.
born with severe disease.
So you can get tested. A couple can get tested to see if their blood is compatible.
Exactly.
But how
Exactly.
long?
And so
How
if
long? How long do the children then live if they have to get transfusions every 2 to 3 weeks or
well
months?
well back in the 1950s, in 1954, when this disease was first discovered by Dr. Cooley's, your lifespan would not have been a teenager. But because of the advancement in treatment,
Right,
with blood transfusion and chelation, because one of the things when you get frequent blood transfusion, you have an iron overload in your system that can
right,
affect your liver and your heart. Those are the two first things. And so there is chelation, which gets rid of the excessive iron. So people are
right.
living in their 70s.
Do
So
they
there
do
is
they still have to
recent
get
treatment. So
but do they
people
still
now,
if
they
you're an
still have the
adult,
disease.
you'll never get rid of it. There's no cure or
You never
there's
get
other
rid of disease unless you have a bone marrow transplant that is successful or gene therapy. And I
okay.
believe that the future cure of HIV is in gene therapy, a
I
bone
do
marrow
too.
transplant. There are also already 3 people who had different cancer and got bone marrow transplant because
Um,
your cells are manufactured in your bone
interesting.
marrow. And so
Yeah.
what they did was to knock out what bone marrow transplant is or gene therapy is they knock out all of the blood cells in your white blood cells, which is in your body, in your bone marrow, and they inject healthy blood cells in your bone marrow. So if you can, and most of this way they're treating this disease and this bone is exactly how HIV is
Big,
replicated and
yeah.
how it is. So what they did is they're injecting which is gene edition, injecting this new healthy blood cells. They're taking out all of those dangerous blood cells or the defective blood cells, and they're injecting this good blood cells. So when your cells are now replicating, you are replicating good blood cells. And that is
Mhm.
exactly how the story of those three people who were cured by HIV, cured from HIV, it was through the exact process. And they
Yeah.
use the way HIV is replicated and the whole genetic of getting a DNA and replicate to RNA and make it is exactly the treatment of how HIV replicate. And if you can cure leukemia or other cancer by it, you can cure HIV by it because they're
But
using the same model.
do you really think though this is practical? I mean, insurance or it's expensive and doctors have to learn how to do it. Do you really think it's practical for the millions of people who are HIV positive or have AIDS?
Well, my thing, this in the United States, medicine is money. I call it the double N. And I,
Terrible.
I make joke about this all the time. The first person who find a cure for HIV, he better keep his mouth shut and do it because he would not survive. Because this is billions of dollars you're talking about.
Yeah.
It costs an average of $30,000 a year to treat somebody with HIV. So if there is a cure,
There's no money.
as a pharmaceutical company, am I going to make $30,000 a year from somebody who's living with HIV for 30 years?
But
Because you no longer.
don't you think that's with a lot of illnesses that are out there? Some of them, of course, you have to take care of your body first and you have to be proactive in your health. But don't you think that the pharmaceutical companies, especially with something like that, they're the only ones they advertise, everybody's smiling, everybody's having a good time, take this pill and the world is perfect. They're not dealing with the fact that you don't want to cure it because there's no money in it. They're out for one thing. They make these drugs you can't even pronounce that cost too much for most people. They haven't even had insurance or they're out of a job or they can't get them anywhere. And then you're saying, why? We don't want to cure these things. There's no money in it. And they're the ones who should be the first lines trying to get it better.
So now we know you equal you. If you're
Yeah.
undetectable, you don't transmit HIV. But if you don't have housing, if you
No.
don't have food, if you don't have a support system, you are going through right now. I'm the primary caregiver for my 86-year-old mother who has
That's
dementia. She's been calling to me in the background because on weekends I don't have an aide. So when I turned my camera off, just I was at wife tending to her. All the issues as you grow older with HIV, you're not just you. I'm taking care of my mother. I'm working full time. I have my mental health issues that I'm addressing. I have I have my issues with her care. Her care is more challenging to me than my
yeah.
own care.
Yeah.
And so, person living with HIV, all of these things, and because people are growing older, they have a partner who might be HIV positive that they're caring for, or a family member, or a child who you have or adopted who is a toddler and you are a caregiver, but nobody talks about all the other struggles. You see people
Right.
smiling on television, but we don't address, especially in minority black and brown communities, all the social, economic, what they could give it this big fancy name now called the I can't remember the name. It's inequity and all
Yeah.
this other stuff that deal with health. But if you don't address it, somebody doesn't have a stable place to live.
No.
You don't,
No.
you couch surfing so you could have sex with people to get a place to stay, or if you are having all these mental health issues, substance use issue, how can you take your pill, even though it's one pill a day? How can you be adherent if all these other um, health disparities are not
Yeah.
addressed? And it's often within the black and brown community.
Steve, the one thing I'm always saying is I would love to have a pharmaceutical company be a sponsor for this show. They could be incredibly, they would look so good. They would come out looking like they were Midas with a gold touch. I always say, if anybody I meet in the pharmacy, just check us out, because you would be the greatest sponsor for a show like this. You would look good. You would still make money, but you would really probably have people buy your other medications because you were doing this. It's amazing how they are the ones who not only selling, but they could be the ones promoting shows like this, where we talk about being HIV positive, where we talk about the service community, where we talk about resources, housing. Also, transportation is a big thing for me. How can you get to the doctor? How can you get to the health department? Housing, transportation, food, resources. Some people don't have it, and that's where you come in trying to get them their needs met.
Absolutely. And one of the, I am, while we don't have a cure, the pharmaceuticals come a far way of improving their medication so it doesn't have so much impact on your kidney and liver, because when you go to the doctor, you got to check all these things. It has a lesser impact. So if you take your medication, if you are adherent to treatment and care, you can live, your health is going to improve. But that is only one aspect of people living with HIV.
Sure.
All the other social, um, economic issues, getting a job with HIV, and um, the stigma, discrimination. I, for stigma and discrimination, I live in New York City. I can't say I live in the United States and get these things. I am fortunate to live in one of the most liberal city that cares about people and have the
Yeah,
advocacy that makes things happen. So I don't.
right.
A lot of people come to New York and think New York is the United States of America. There are
It's
challenges
it's a different
with it.
beast. It's a different beast. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I attended the HIV biomedical conference in Chicago, and this was 2002. And I was still hearing people who were attending, people living with HIV attending that conference, is still talking about taking public transportation and not stopping directly in front of the clinic, because everybody who goes to the clinic is the HIV clinic.
Mhm.
And I was surprised that people are taking public transport and still having that stigma associated with HIV. And they have to stop 2 or 3 or 4 blocks to walk back to the clinic so that people don't know they have
Yeah,
HIV.
we have
That
that issue
is what we need to address, because if you can't
every.
address stigma, you could take all the medication you want, but there are all these other stuff that is going on. So
Yeah,
if you are living in a community that stigma still exists, how can you go to work and somebody know that you're HIV positive? My job knows, because I tell them from day one, I have HIV, and I have a lot of doctor's appointments that I have to go to. But this is a much more progressive organization that I'm working that is not HIV. And my the fantastic boss, his name is Craig Butler. I have never been so happy on a job. I don't go home complaining about my day at work and all the stuff. I've worked in HIV for 20 years. And it is so much, it's the people who living with HIV is the one who driving the healthcare of people living with HIV. Is those are the people who care and advocate. And I have personally felt discrimination and stigma. But as I said, if you don't add value to my life, I have nothing to lose. And if I have to
Mm,
quit your job or if I have to be up in your face and be, that's when the Brooklyn comes out to me. Because
good.
I don't, you should not see me as, oh, he has HIV. You should see me for who I am and what skills. Basically, you hire me to do the job, not because I have a medical condition. Because if you have diabetes and any other issues, it would not be a problem at work. Why should
No.
HIV be a problem? But I don't know the rest of the United States how things go. I only know how discriminatory living in the rural area of the United States can be.
Yeah,
Um,
very different from
in
New
New
York
York
and
City,
Kansas.
and I have a
Yeah.
job that tells me, you know what? It is good for the community. Do it. And I
Steve,
have not
I
had
think
any job before that gives me the latitude to still be an advocate for people living with HIV.
I think New York is a little different than Kansas, and nothing against Kansas, but I think you live in a much more proactive, liberal. It's a different animal. It's like if you've ever been to Florida, Palm Beach County is different than Broward, or different than Miami, Dade County, or different than the Panhandle, or different than way up there near Gainesville and in the middle of Orlando. Living in Florida, people can say, oh, it's all like Miami. No, it's not. You can drive 300 miles north and you feel like you're in the country. And New York's the same way, but it's still very, very liberal. But it's not. New York is all the boroughs. It's all the different ethnic groups that have settled there. My grandparents were there. But in general, I just think it's so fascinating that 40 years later, that I know one thing, this show with people like you and my other guests, we got guests to the first of the year so far, and we haven't even done any real promotional on it because you're the promotional. You'll tell someone, you'll tell your groups, you'll tell your people. If you have a story, there is a show that airs out of West Palm Beach. We stream out of here and we talk about you. Tell me your story. You got to, and that's how we're making the big difference through the media, through social networking in a good way. Try and remove the stigmas. I always say step out, shout it out, be proud of who you are. And life is way too short because what do I care what you think of me? Here I am, 77, dressed like this, all the gloves, all the crazy jewelry. Yeah, I was born peculiar. That's part of the Bible in me. I'm a peculiar people and I'm proud of it. That's what people have to do is you are you. You are unique. You are a creation of God. And you know what? There's no one to judge you because don't you dare judge because you'll be the first one to judge someone else's judging. It's just so crazy that people look at you, they think they know you. I said, my other guest, other guy said, I don't have a past with you. I have your bio, but I don't have a past with you. What I do have now is a present, and I can relate to you as you and I go forward. But people have to meet people on their journey.
I want to plug something here that is extremely important because of what you say. As an immigrant, when I first joined it, when I first was appointed to the HIV Planning Council, I realized that healthcare is politics. I'm not a politician, but since I became a United States citizen, I voted in every single election. So when I stand up in front of my elected official, I am your constituent. And I've always tell all when I go to do advocacy and I'm going in front of a legislative representative, I
God,
always tell them, you're seeing one person, but my Facebook feed can reach 2,800 people by a click. I can
mm-hmm.
influence people in the community not to vote for you because you are the one. I live in your community. I am HIV positive. I am your constituent, and you have to listen to me. You have to do what is good for the community that you are represented. You are represent. So if your community have a pocket of LGBTQ people living with HIV, you got to listen to them. And the only way they will listen to you, or the only way you can make a change, especially in rural America, or where you're talking
Yeah,
about in Florida, You get out there and you vote, because healthcare is politics, and politics is healthcare, and healthcare
Yep,
is your life.
yep.
Vote.
It's healthcare, insurance companies, the way our country is run with this. I'm still amazed that you call up and that's first, what insurance do you have? Well, could you first say hello? This is my name. What can I do for you? Hello, my name is Susan. How can I help you? No, they pick up the phone. What insurance do you have? I'm 77. I'm great. My husband passed away. I 30 years later, I'm fine. I've written my book. I got my show. One more step is to get a series made from it, and someone will come along, take my book and make it into a series. But I'm still amazed that all these years later, people are living in a cave when it comes to certain things like this. It's like their heads are under a rock.
And so that is how advocacy works. You get into get out there, get into the community, and speak truth to the powers that be, and
Yeah.
vote, because
That's
those are the people who make policies that will affect your life.
Well, if certain issues hit the politicians' lives more, you might see more of a change. And I look at that as a lot of other issues. When there's these mass shootings, let's say, or that these other things that are going on, I think if it hit a senator's kid with the guns, if it hit a senator's child with HIV, or a serious stuff, I think you would start to see more change, but it doesn't seem to be personally affecting certain people. If it hit their lives, they would say more, they would care more, and they would do more. So voting is the only way. Ask them how they feel about what you want them to feel about. If they feel about it, great. If they don't, move to the next one.
And so everything that is done in Washington, D.C. affects people in healthcare. Because if they cut programs that provide, especially the Ryan White program, if they are cutting healthcare program, it's going to affect people living with HIV.
Right. I don't know where Ricciardo went. Ricciardo, come back. Call him back. We both have called. Ricciardo, come back. This has been wonderful, though, speaking with you. I'm so happy. Again, some guests I know, and some guests I meet for the first time, but I like the bios. Oh, that's the music. I don't know if we have 2 minutes or no minutes or 10 minutes, but we hear that.
When the music comes on, you have to stop your speech at the Grammys.
Yeah, they haul you off to get the fish hook. Well, we had to deal with first he was going to give me a 2 minute warning. Then there was no warning in one of his shows. And now we have the official warning of, I think it might be 10 minutes, though it still might be two. But when we hear that music, I said, Ricciardo, play some heavy metal stuff. Stay some butt that we want to get up and dance to. But he wants that soft, calming music. He's
And
quite a
so
great guy.
my last word to everybody, and I don't want to, if they don't add value to your life, you have nothing to lose.
Right. Here, here and now with the heavy metal. Thank you. Thank you. Now come
Thank you
back.
for
We're
allowing
waiting to
me.
see your face. Where are you? I want you though to do your homework and tell your friends. You have a lot of connections. I want them to call that number. What's it? 561-208-6595 or Campbell Health Solutions or campbellhealth.org. And you have stories. We're going to have hundreds of stories. This show's going to go on for a long, long time because I love it. Number one, he wants to do it, and our guests have so much to give. I just want to say thank you. And thank you for taking care of your mom. My parents lived to be 92, and I was the only woman in the middle of winter going to Troy, New York from Boca Raton, tanned, wearing a fur coat and trudging through the snow. But my parents never knew a day when they weren't loved and well taken care of. So God bless you for honoring your mom and taking care of her. And we will
Thank
let you
you.
know when your show, I'll let you know when your show airs. And I always do a little promo the day before. Thank you for watching Positively Positive. Thank you for hearing Steve Hemraj for being an incredible guest. And just keep speaking out. This is Susan Mintz saying thank you so much for watching. So long. See you next time, some other evening. Yes.